Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fan-tacking episode, issue, format, team-up of the War of the Panels with my lovely sidekick, co-host, partner extraordinaire, and woke femme fatale, Sara.
Hello.
Yes, as you may see, there's some excitement in my voice today. There's something I've always wanted to talk about, but I will get to it later. We have so much news in such little time. Sara, lead us off into the brilliant topics of the week.
All right. So the biggest topics are that basically DC is having a baby renaissance, and not in the film world, but on TV, because apparently someone at DC struck a massive deal with the upcoming HBO Max streaming service. And we're not getting not one, not two, nay, not even 3 shows. We are getting basically 7 shows on HBO Max coming from the DC universe.
Yeah.
Now, I know, there's so many. So the first one that got announced was one with our good friend, J.J. Abrams. He will be doing an adaptation of the Justice League Dark, which should be very interessante. We also found out today, as in the day of recording, that Matt Reeves is also working on a Gotham PD prequel for his upcoming movie in 2021, The Batman.
I was so excited about that. I love Gotham Central, which was also Gotham PD from the 80s. I love that series. I could talk hours about that book, but now is not the time.
Now is not the time. We are also getting an Untitled Green Lantern show, an Untitled Animated Aquaman series, and also a comedy series that is being executive produced by actress Elizabeth Banks called DC Superhero High, and an adaptation of Strange Adventures. But that's not all, because, apparently DC wanted to give HBO Max more. The second season of Doom Patrol will be on HBO Max, and the Harley Quinn show, the animated show with Kaylee Cuoco, is also going to HBO Max. So basically, it looks like they're almost phasing out DC Universe, and they're just going to give everything to HBO Max, which, my heart kind of hopes that maybe now that all these projects are moving to HBO Max, maybe they'll bring back Swamp Thing.
That would be a great idea, and hopefully Swamp Thing will have a crossover with my good boy, the Constantine.
Yes, unfortunately there's no Constantine series currently in development. I know you want one, Carl wants one, I want one, but does DC listen to us? No, because that would make sense. It would make sense to listen to their audience, but hey,
They are who they are.
They are who they are, but yeah, basically, if you're a DC fan, then you're gonna really want to get HBO Max, because these are some big names. Elizabeth Banks has executive produced a lot of really great shows. J.J. Abrams, love him or hate him, he's stuff.
Brilliant.
There's some things.
I say he's brilliant in the cast of, like, I say modern sense, like from Guardians to, I guess, the way he makes movies. It's appealing in a modern sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Nothing he makes is bad.
Yeah.
But very few of them are great. But anyway, however you feel about it, it's at least going to be interesting. And this new Batman show, Gotham PD or Gotham City PD, I don't know what they're going to call it. That looks like it's going to have a lot of promise. Again, it's being headed up by Matt Reeves, who's directing The Batman, set to come out in October 2021, and it's being written by Terrence Winter. Winter wrote for The Sopranos, and then he created and developed Boardwalk Empire for HBO. So he's like he's really entrenched in the space, and it makes sense for him to do like a cop drama. So that's going to be exciting.
Yep. Definitely got his feet in there, and which also begs a little tangent. What is the point that DC, their own, what's that streaming pass they have, DC Online, whatever
DC
they call
Universe.
it? DC Universe. So it feels kind of pointless at the point. They got HBO Max, just cut the app, give people refunds, or turn it to HBO Max, accounts, and just ship it to them. It's hardly any point. At this point.
No, I think that's what they're going to end up doing, but, we'll just have to see. Who knows what DC is thinking. Honestly, their strategy has been really weird. Oh, and you know what we forgot to talk about that's also coming to HBO Max, which we talked about last episode, is the Snyder Cut. So that's yet another DC thing that is going to be on HBO Max.
Yep, everyone's going to love their director cut movie.
Yep.
Which is still the same movie, just with extra parts, but I guess it's enough for some people.
Oh man, don't get bitter, Matt. Don't get bitter.
It's hard not to be, especially in times like this. If when they especially when they're giving you the fuel, giving you the fuel.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. And one thing to discuss that makes me slightly bitter, I guess I could talk about the man who used to be part of DC, Dan DiDio.
Oh, is it the Dan DiDio rant time?
It is. I have been hinting or teasing at it for a while now. And I'm going to let you guys know this is not an argument against he's a bad person. He's just bad at management and his job. Yes, he's been co-publisher for 18 plus years. I think 18 is a number, but he was really bad for a really long time. And the best way to describe how bad he was is I have a couple of points to bring out why he's bad. The first point I'm going to bring up is he's not a team leader. We need to evaluate why he's a bad team leader. And I'm going to bring up one of my favorite quotes I have from Paul Levitz, the former publisher and editor-in-chief at DC and one of the great writers there across the board. Paul Levitz stated, I'm going to try to sound like a nice guy. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul Jenkins. Sorry, Paul Jenkins. Oh, I got incorrect, guys. Paul Jenkins is a writer. Paul Levitz is someone else. I always get the Pauls mixed up, and I am a Paul myself. DC is in the toilet right now. Suffice to say that the fans are not getting the creators in the books. They are getting an unpalatable product, which is destroyed by editorial interface and perpetuated by unqualified project managers. He said this in 2013 at the beginning of the height of the DC 52. Now, who's in charge of the project managers? Well, if you look at any corporate structure, it would be the co-publisher and the chief, Dan DiDio. Simple line. The thing about it is that if you don't want to believe a current writer that was there, Mark Waid, everyone loves Mark Waid from Daredevil, Flash, Archie. He's written almost anything under the sun. He is a qualified writer, regardless how you feel about his politics. My opinion, one of the best books he ever wrote was Captain America, Man Without a Country. One of the best runs ever of Captain America I love because Captain America was a fugitive. Kind of cool stuff, at least in the 90s.
That's not the Nomad run, right?
I believe so. It's been a while. Yes, I think when he changed, he had a last year thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anywho, Mark Waid stated this: the biggest challenge was actually wisely kept from us by Steve. Editor-in-chief Dan DiDio, who was first championing the project, hated what we were doing, and he typed it out, HATE52. Would storm up down the hall, telling everyone how much he hated it. And Steve, God bless him, kept us out of the loop for that particular drama. Siglin has less seniority, which is another project editor, manager, and was able to do so was one issue, the 52 near the end, has been written totally by Dan and Keith Giffen because none of the writers could plot it to Dan's satisfaction. Before I read on to that, how is it possible that you hire a writer to do a particular thing and my job is to satisfy you? This sounds pretty bad, don't you think, Sarah?
I mean, as somebody who works in a very tiered system at work, yeah, it sounds pretty awful.
Yeah, because the idea is that we're writing a product of my style to give it to you, and my job is to satisfy you, rather satisfy the fans who know who I am to give a product of what they expected. Unless Mark Waid's going out of the guidelines, such as, turning Batman legay, which is a possibility, which is not a bad writing, not an insult to Batman or any of the fans of him, but you could do it. Or, because it's against DC policy, or making Superman immune to kryptonite, which defeats the purpose of Superman, then he should be able to write anything to destroy the constructs of the character. But we got to satisfy Dan DiDio. So back to the amazing Mark Waid quote, which was, and is his prerogative as editor-in-chief. But man, there was so little more demoralizing than taking the ball down 1 yard line and then being benched to a guy who kept referring to Countdown as 52 downright. Countdown was an event during New 52 or Pre-52 that was supposed to lead to the New 52 event, which was not a good line, and many people have reviewed it as one of the worst events in comics history, at least one of them, because there's a lot of them that are pretty bad, but this is, in modern era, this is one of them. And here's something even more interesting about his editor style. Now, you may have known there's a writer, a former Batgirl writer, Marigrade Scott, came forward about exclusion about DC. She mentioned that I started to get the gig and I was desperately wanted to believe it was timing. I begged my editors to let me come in for free, at least sit in on a summit to deal with my characters. I was literally working up the street at the time, and it didn't matter. Erica Scott was a writer that was not allowed to be in any of the meetings of the Bat family characters with editors or other writers. She was kept out of the loop for a reason, and we do not know why, even to this day. And who was in charge? Dan DiDio, which points out the first point why Dan DiDio is bad at being a leader. Why would you go so hard to everyone to please you and leave your own talent, whose job to write the books, to not be part of anything? How is that possible?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. I also got even more quotes about this. Greg Rucka in 2012. Oh God, I'm gonna sit here and just sigh in relief a lot. You can hear me say this like, Greg Rucka in 2012 came out and said, "I gave 7 good years to DC and they took gross advantage of me. That was partially my fault, but not entirely. At this point, I see no reason why I should have to put up with that. I could sink or swim on my own. There was at least a period where I felt that the way they wanted me to make money was telling the best story they could. Now the quality of the work matters less than the book that comes out. There was a far less desire to see what was good work to be done." And this is the truth about Greg Rucka. Greg Rucka is known to be a little bit of a princess, a drama queen, but he writes poetry. And he cares about quality of book as a long time. If you read any Greg Rucka story, he cares, especially from Gotham Central or Gotham PD, as we talked previously, to his own creator-owned books, Stumpton, and to, like I said, one of my favorite books he ever spoke was Queen and Country, and his Wonder Woman run he wrote, which is, in DC. So that's the best way to describe it. Now, the reason this quote came up was during where Greg Rucka was working on, as I mentioned before, Gotham Central. Dan DiDio has gone on record, and this is the same man that said Gotham Central will never be canceled as long as he was there, telling people it was a great book, Gotham Central was, but it has never made any money. Gotham Central was nominated for Eisner Award, which is the big award for comics to people who may not know.
Yeah, it's a huge, the Eisners are they're almost like the Oscars for books and comic books. Like, Eisner Awards are a massive deal. They happen during San Diego Comic-Con, right?
That is correct, around that season, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, huge, an Eisner is like an Oscar. It's a huge fucking deal.
Mm-hmm. And the messed up part is that this is me. If you look at the sales of trades that sold, it's phenomenal. The book made more money as a trade. And this is what Greg Rucka said. Well, what I'm being told is it was never worth to us. It was never worth anything to us anyway. So you know what? They could stop selling the Batwoman Elegy and trade and stop selling the Wonder Woman trades for everything else I've done, because clearly I have not done anything of service to those guys and making money off me. And that's what they told it. Dan, this book was doing great. And then you tell the writer's face, F off, it's not making money. And the money's referring to people as the singles, selling floppies, the single issues. And it shows how Dan DiDio was adjusting to the times. As Sara and I have been talking many times, trades are a lot more important, in at least in modern context, than single issues, which is not an insult to single issues.
Right, no, of course. But for me, if I want to get into a new series and, I come to it late, I'm not going to, try and catch up and buy all the single issues. I'm just going to wait for the trade to come out.
Right. Or some omnibus or anything else.
Or, yeah, whatever collecting it's going to do.
Right. And this is another final quote from Warren Ellis in 2011. Warren Ellis, when we discussed him last episode about his allegations, and again, we're waiting for those to come out. If he did groom those women and sexually assault them, he's a scumbag. But right now, we're talking the context, regardless if he's a top writer, we're talking about his experience with DC. So please leave that in mind. I am hearing a lot about writers being put into foot races on gigs, and not only they do not know who else is in the running for the job, many of them seem to be told they're in a foot race at all. Writers who have assumed that they are writing the gig are being told that they have never had the gig at all, and that other writers have not run parallel to them, even though they were put through multiple drafts. They didn't know that they were in competition. They are finding new and interesting ways to piss off more people than they are hiring. Now comics have no shortage of resentful people. But do you really want to create exponentially more? People who can identify the exact individuals who fucked them over and wait. Commercially, comics can be enough a snake pit, and even in relatively benign times. But bringing back a process that is both demeaning and creatively inferior is just fucking vying to people about it. I do not like that they say. The next cycle's in the field. I guess in the 90s are really coming back. And what Warren Ellis is talking about, for those who don't understand, in the late 80s and 90s, during the highlight of the comic eras, one of the greatest editors of all time, Jim Shooter, created a system known as the bullpen, where writers will compete with each other for a book and be unaware or aware that they're doing it and could lose a job because one guy's a better hook than you or has completed it faster than you, etc. This is a bad way of doing business because there's not enough people in the space to do it, and it makes people resentful because they put a bunch of work for a job that's not even theirs.
Damn.
It's not, and this is my opinion, it's a good system to create talent to put on books that aren't popular. The bullpen has created many success people such as Frank Miller and Klaus Jensen and some other writers. Those are the top two I can think of, popular creators I can think of right now. So my opinion of the bullpen is that it is great, but if people are aware they're in the bullpen working on it, they can decide for themselves they want to be put in this competitive sphere. But as Warren Ellis said, is upset about it because again, you've been lied to about it. You don't know who you are. And even if you were at the time, Warren Ellis, a top writer, it's a bit insulting to your talent. They're just trying to get work for you for free. Which is, I could just pay Sara for exposure. Here, Sara, exposure bucks.
Oh my God, all my exposures.
My exposures.
My exposures. That's what I live and breathe on, baby. You can buy so much with exposure.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, another factor I want to point out is point 2 is that Dan DiDio is bad at being a visionary. And being a visionary in the sense of understanding the future of your books and writing talent of that people that work through him or no longer work with him. Here are some of the big name people that are at across the industry that has left DC or are not currently working at DC. Robert Kirkman. He worked with Marvel, and you know Robert Kirkman. The Walking Dead. Outcast. Robert Kirkman. That's literally his power. He just tells you he's Robert Kirkman and you just lose your mind.
Just throw all the money at him.
Mark Millar, who also worked with Marvel but currently has a poor relationship with DC. And Brubaker works with Marvel, has no one capacity working with DC. Kieran Gillen, everyone's favorite Gillen. I mean, it's great.
I love him.
I'm not a fan of all of his books, per se, because his books are weird. I'm not denying it.
Yeah.
Just put it this way, if you read Journey to Mystery and then you read The Wicked and Divine, you'd be like, who is this man? Who is this man?
He is a legend. But
yeah, exactly. That's how weird his books are.
I like his stuff.
Matt Fraction. I like his stuff. Yeah, I know. I enjoy it too. It's just his book. Like I say, I'm letting people know his books are weird. Fraction, though he's currently working with DC, he's working in a limited capacity, but he's also worked with Marvel. Alex Cott, he used to do a couple of issues. Suicide Squad, Marvel. Now, all these people I'm listed off are people who used to work at DC, obviously never went back to a limited capacity or aren't there anymore. Bad relationships, he's not a visionary. He cannot seem to convince these people to consistently stay with him or the projects, as I mentioned before, as Warren Ellis had issues, as well as Mark Waid. So how can he be a visionary to create new books for his series if he can't keep them to stay and make them creatively happy? Bad management and bad at being a visionary. Even right now, Willow Wilson, I love her. I guess the creator of, in some capacity, Miss Marvel, one of the best new characters in modern comics era. She's at DC right now. She wrote a miniseries for Vixen under Vertigo, and she hasn't seemed to get the same impact, or at least press buzz, about her Wonder Woman books. And I've read it, and I don't feel like this is her voice. It's someone telling her, nope, can't do that. Can't do this. Not what I pay you for. It's like he's paying them for their name to write garbage books. I mean, Sara, you follow a lot more authors and writers, particularly, not to sound sexist, female writers more than I do, and creators, or of the spectrum than I do. Have you heard anything positive or outbreaking about G. Wilson's Wonder Woman or anything she's done at DC while she's currently still there?
I literally didn't even know she was at DC. Like, there's been no hype, and that's really weird coming from a woman who, like, really helped revamp Marvel.
Yeah, it's exactly. And this is me not being a jerk or anything. This is facts. Sara just told you she had no idea until like a minute ago.
Yep.
And then comes point 4. Dan DiDio dealing with point 3. How am I gonna? There's no point 4. Just say Dan DiDio dealing with criticism. There'll be a point 4 soon, but Dan DiDio does not deal with criticism very well. His opinions of Vertigo, one of my favorite printing presses of all time. You see me guys talk about Vertigo all the time. I love that press. I don't know what they did to my poor boy, but they killed it. And some ass killing it. It's myopic to believe that servicing a very small slice of our audience is the way to go to head. That's not what we're in the business for. We have to shoot for the stars with whatever we're doing because we're trying to reach the biggest audience and be successful as possible. That's just condescending. That is the stupidest thing you ever said, because that shows he doesn't understand the brand of Vertigo. Vertigo as a brand is famous for printing out strange and popular adult books and cultivating the future of writers in the industry. A lot of great writers started at Vertigo. Neil Gaiman, Sandman, and Swamp Thing. Constantine was a great property. It started with Warren Ellis, and Garth Ennis' career were there. Preacher, Garth Ennis. Scouts by Jason Aaron, who is no longer working at DC, who's currently at Marvel Independent. So you're going to scalp a plan of books that have been nominated for Eisner Awards and treated as top books the entire life that anyone can recommend picking up, that still sells in comics stores around every time they're reprinted. Nope. It's myopic to think we're selling to a slice of people. And comics is already, as an industry, small as it is, and compared to other relative entertainment industries.
Yep.
So it's just crazy.
It baffles the mind.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And here's another thing: his statements and how he deals with criticism. Right. In 2011. In an opening minutes of DC's first New 52 series at San Diego Comic-Con, which was on a Thursday, the final Thursday of San Diego Comic-Con. Sorry, I have a story about New York Comic-Con back in the story. Dan DiDio turned to the audience and asked what DC do to change change minds about those skittish about impending new launch. One man yelled, "Hire women." Dan DiDio responds to turn back to the question and ask him whom he thinks DC should hire. Things are sure to be more heated, no matter tossing question back to the audience. Dan DiDio repeatedly asked the audience members what statistic he cited mean to him and has called for names of female DC creators that should have hired less than a request and more of a challenge. As he says, "Tell me right now," and the audience members seem to be struggling attempts to respond. I'm going to break it down. Is the guy just yelled, "Hire more women"? He got back to, "What do you mean women? Tell me which ones." And then the guy named women who are currently at DC who are being hired to be on books who are contractors, and he got back to them saying, "Well, I never heard what the statistics. Like, we just told you what we want. Hire more female writers." And by the way, Marvel did it and created the era of all new, all different Marvel 1.0, and it was successful.
Wow.
Rainbows, everyone, for doing the thing. He just doesn't seem to get it, and it insults me because. How could a man who claims to love comics doesn't get it? I mean, everyone has a taste in comics. As I just came up and claimed, I'm not a huge Kieran Gillen fan. I think his books are great. It's weird. But if I was going to not hire Kieran Gillen, I'd be denying people the fact that Mr. Gillen can give books that people like and sells well just because I don't like it. Bringing back to the first point I've mentioned, he made Mark Waid and other writers write books to his satisfaction, not to the satisfaction of the readers, which they wanted to get what they're known for. It all seems to be a circle. You guys can put the pieces together if you want, but this is Dan DiDio. And here's the thing. Here's another thing. Dylan Horrocks described the death of Stephanie Brown, which was, the third Batgirl. To Dan and Dan DiDio's opinion of it was like, oh God. It was one of the most depressing weeks of my life because we basically spent the whole week in this horrible office planning how to kill this poor teenage girl who I really liked, and I thought she was a great character. It was really seedy, and I think about in 2 days, it basically said, look, I don't want, because they ran this big, long torture sequence, I said, I don't really want to have anything to do with that. So, yeah, that's one, as Gail Simone said in the past, woman in the refrigerator aesthetic, which is we're going to kill a character and torture a woman just because, so we can.
Fridging is more like you kill a character in a particularly gruesome or violent way, so that there's like emotional stakes or emotional development for the male characters in the book.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me with that. It's just, and I call it what it is. Women refrigerator and this torturing, whatever. It's just torture porn for the wrong reasons. It has no purpose. And when Dan DiDio was confronted by this, and many other Change DC fans were upset, he actually said this: "We publish we publish we don't publish comic for kids. We publish comic for 45-year-olds."
Cool. That's still not like an argument. Like, even 45-year-olds can be like, huh, the rape and or murder and or torture of this person is not interesting or titillating. Like, it's just kind of gross.
Yeah. Now that's enough. Now we can put all the pieces together. You got a picture there. He's not a visionary because he cannot make people who have different ideas work with him because he wants to make and write comics where he wants, rather than comics that appeal to a band. If it's a business, like let's be honest with you, Sarah, you and I like different type of comics, and as a publisher or editor in chief, your position is to write the best comics that will get the most people.
Right.
If you don't like it, that is fine. As a publisher, like for example, I'm not huge into horror comics. It's not my jam. But if horror comics are popular, I'll just get the best horror comic I can get and make sure I sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. But he doesn't get that. But again, here's something even more crazier. When Dan DiDio was confronted, and again, about asking about recap pages and things about comics, this is what he had to say. Somebody asked me if they were going to use recap pages. I said, I don't know. It's just, if we were just on issue 1, if we need a recap page, it's probably screwed up our mission. Our goal is to never have recap pages, but I understand the people's desire. I always call the recap page lazy writing because I felt it has always gave someone an easy way to do an essay about what's going on in the book rather than what's going on in the storytelling. I think we'd rather find a way to make the stories as dramatic as possible, so we don't have to rely on things like that. That being said, it does make sense for a particular time if you're building up to a major, and we use every tool at disposal to make these books accessible as possible. Now, the recap page in comics is used for tons of readers or new people to get it. They pick up a trade, they get a little backstory about the character before they get the book. I personally believe it's an old comic trope that's a bit useless, but it's also useful in times where you give someone who has never read a comic book, who has no idea what to expect, and they most likely probably read the recap page. It exists for a reason. The reason why it was on a recap page is he doesn't want people writing essays about it, or he considers lazy writing. In reality, he doesn't want people to critique his works, because the idea if there was a recap page and I'm just reading your recap, and if it sounds stupid, I'm not going to pick up the book.
Right.
You're trying to bait me to buy a product. I know I'm gambling. You're essentially making me flip a coin if it's good or bad to my taste, rather than giving me a chance to sample it. And I'm talking in the context of somebody buys a book on the spot by looking at it, not the people who sit there at a store, like, flip a book a couple pages and decide on that. I'm talking about that scenario. Yes, there's other ways of doing it. So yes.
Dang.
Yep. Now, he hates to grace him and go into that later. That's a whole different thing. And here's my final point of DC. He's bad at business. Now I'm going to talk about in comic share. In 2004, when he became executive editor, compared to the president, DC's market share in 2004 was 30.63% to the dollar share, meaning that's 30% of the market's dollar was going to DC, and 32% was going to the unit share for each item that was sold to DC. Now, if you compare it today, compare it to another thing, the other industry, I'm going to compare to Image, because the Image is the best industry, because I don't want to say Marvel, because at the time Marvel was at this high too, and we go, oh, Marvel fanboy. Image, at his year end of 2004, was at 3.9% per dollar share, and 3.94 unit share. That means every dollar spent, 3% went to Image in the sales of comics, and 3.94 each unit was to Image, which is good. Now, if we go to 2016, which is roughly 4 years ago, which became, I call the dark era of DC because Dan DiDio was just rebirth, whatever. Here's the thing. DC's market share in 2016 was 22.16%. That means from 2004 to 2016, 30% to 22%. That's an 8% dollar share loss.
Wow.
And unit share for 2016 was 24.02%. The unit share is 32.23. It dropped 8%. They have dropped 8% over 12 years, being a lead person when Dan DiDio became publisher, a prominent figure. Not a visionary. He's not a good leader. he doesn't know how to work with people, and he's bad at criticism. And there's tons of bad things he says. Now, I'm not even, if he says, oh, what about the Image model you mentioned? Well, here's Image. Image of 2016 made 9.67, and that's in dollar share. And in 2016, they made 20.99 unit share. They have tripled the amount of dollars they've earned in 12 years. And roughly 3 times and over in unit share, meaning they have grown their business while DC has shrank. And we're not getting into Marvel because Marvel was just killing it, for God's sake, in 2016 upwards. Mm-hmm. So that's not even like that's not even me being biased. I use another company, Image. The Cool Kids. Yeah, the Cool Kids comics.
I do like Image comics.
Oh, I do too.
Okay.
Their model is very double-bladed, and the model is the public. They pay for the creators pay to make the books, but all the profit goes to the creators. So basically, you have to pay Image to publish a book once they approve it, and you pay them to publish it. But every dollar sold by the book you make goes straight to you, and all the royalty and rights, everything. Yep, and that's their thing. And here's something even more. I'm gonna go back to Dan DiDio's incompetence as a visionary and incompetence as, I want to say, his leadership model. Now, in March 2013. This was during the bad time of DC up to 20. Like I said, the bad time of DC, in my opinion, was like between Dan DiDio became in charge. I want to say between 2012 all the way till like when he got let go. It was a bad time. So this is according to Andy Diggle, I believe, or some other creative team who's told me the story. Actually, it's been confirmed by those links, but I'll get into it later. DC Comics had a rough week in March 2013. The beleaguered publisher had came under fire on Wednesday when news broke out that Andy Diggle was walking off the creative team of Action Comics the same day previous run were DC publishing weekly comics. Series artist Tony Daniel was announced as his replacement, but Daniel had to find out via a Facebook post.
Ooh, that's a bad luck.
Yeah. Joshua Hale Feekenoff walked off his job as a writer for Green Lantern Corps and Green Lantern the same day. It later came to find out he did it because DC was planning to kill prominent Black Green Lantern John Stewart.
Ooh.
That is why he left the book. So everyone found out through the internet. That's not a good look. And it's just upsetting that this is Dan DiDio. The man who people like, oh, he's great. He's been nice to me. He's a great guy. No. He just because he's good at being a nice person doesn't mean he's good at his job. And that's something people need to understand. Not all nice people are good at their jobs. Not all jerks are bad at their jobs. You just have to learn to deal with them, like being an adult.
Yep. And
that is my Dan DiDio rant. If anything else if you guys want to come back with counterpoints, I have many things to talk about this man, because I've done, as you see, done research and everything. And the best way to describe him is he was a failure to make people work with him. He was a failure to lead business, and he had bad ideas. He had stupid ideas from his own bad creative, and he couldn't make books work. And he alienated his creative staff, and he could not be a visionary. He could not do business, all because he had this warped ideology what comics should be and try to force everyone to it, rather than let comics be what they are. And if they're good or bad, that's up to the readers to decide and build upon that. Have faith in your consumers because they believe in you. People are still watching DC products and DC movies. People love the DC TV shows. I love them too. I love Black Lightning. I love The Flash. I love all these shows. I can go on and on about them. People love the movies. Well, some of the movies. They're being incredibly criticized. But the point is, people have faith and love their products that much. How come you can't deliver on the comic front? Because you're a bad leader. And I'm glad that you will let go, and I hope you never come back to this industry. Later. That is the DC rant.
Damn, that was an epic rant. That was thoughtful and well sourced, and damn. So now, if you don't know, now you know.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Jose. And speaking of more bad news, one of DC writers, Scott Lobdell, and he is controversial because he said some sexist and things in the past, and he apologized for it. But he has written some good books in his time. He used to work at Marvel. I think he was Generation X writer. He's an X-Men writer. Nice. And he, at DC, he wrote the horrible Teen Titans run. Don't ever read those. During New 52. Don't read that. He wrote Red Hood and the Outlaw, which is pretty good. And as of, I believe, 2 weeks ago, he's leaving. He's leaving after issue 50, so he'll be out, and that's October. He hasn't. Yeah.
Well, damn. Tis what it is.
Yep. And he managed to end it at issue 50, so I don't know if he's still at DC or if he'll be continuing work there. But again, he was during the time of Dan DiDio, so I wouldn't be surprised he decided to leave too. I mean, I'm not. I know Dan DiDio is no longer with the company, but guys, just because Dan DiDio is gone doesn't mean his projects aren't leaving yet. The thing is that they haven't found a new publisher to take a position. So far, it's all Jim Lee. And until his ideas that he paid people and commissioned to do, they still have to run their course. So you might have to wait a year or two for DC to have another rebirth for them to come back with stronger titles.
Wow.
Yeah. And if any, actually, should I do that? I'm thinking about calling my lovely girlfriend Cassie to this podcast and let her tell a story about how she met Dan DiDio and New York Comic Con and she couldn't believe how horrible this man was. But that's just petty. But should I do that, Sarah? Should I?
We should set it up as a special episode because I think Cassie deserves a little bit of glamour. Do you know?
A little bit of glamour, the love of my life, the great my queen. No, I love her. She's the love of my life, and I'm glad every day I spend with her. Yeah, but in all seriousness, it's just like it was. So I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Lobel decides to leave or move on, as well as. And here's a sidebar moment of DC making bad decisions. They hired Michael Bendis to be a writer. They overpaid him to do Batman and Superman. His Superman run is not selling. It's done bad. This was one of Dan DiDio's ideas to get him. Brian Michael Bendis was one of the best comic creators in the world, but he stopped being good over the mid 2000s after his Avengers run at Marvel when he's bad at writing children. Okay. He wrote X-Men is not good. He may have created Miles Morales, but I can't recommend a Miles Morales comic to anybody, at least currently. The concept of Miles Morales is cool, but as a black kid reading it, I felt a bit insulted. It felt like a white man is writing my book with no sense of like integrity, compassion, understanding what it like to be black, compared to, oh God, I forgot the guy's name. He's the creator of Luke Cage. Archie something. Oh God.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And the creator of Luke Cage, he written a story about Luke Cage, a humanistic black person, and he understood the struggle being black, even though he's Jewish in real life, which makes, even though, he's not a black writer, but he wrote my struggles and my suffering very well.
Archie Goodwin. We got it at the same time.
Yeah, high five. Bam. Archie Goodwin is great. He written Luke Cage as somebody I can relate to, even though he is not black. He has compassion and empathy to understand the sufferings and understandings of my livelihood or my people, and I can get it. While reading Miles Morales by Bendis, I didn't sense that at all. So he's not good at writing kids or people of color, at least young people of color. So he was at DC. It was a big deal, $5 million, and it was not good. At least the Superman run's not good because what they end up doing is that the popular Superman run by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason was the Superman run where we decided Superman has a family now. He has a son, John Kent, and people were liking this. This was creating critical reviews and claims. And then he decided to cancel those writers, making them upset, and give the book to Bendis. And Bendis turned it into a very dark Superman book, which people were not liking or reading. And that's the best way to describe Dan DiDio's philosophy or understanding his entire run of being a DC. Taking away the good stuff and giving you bad stuff because that's what he thinks he wants, or not understanding what the people wanted by insulting Vertigo, making writers leave, lying to writers' faces, making them leave, pushing plot points that they want to do, like torture porn for Stephanie Brown, or trying to kill Jon Stewart. Why would you do this to me? But anywho, that's just it. I'm done talking about Mr. DiDio. He is out of my industry. I don't care what he's done. The good he's done is minuscule to the many evils he's done in the industry to this comic book company. A comic book company that people still love and respect the IP to this day. And I really don't hope for him to come back to this business. I really don't. In no capacity. He can retire and earn his checks and I will never see him again. That's what I'm hoping for.
Damn. Well, I don't think there's anything more to discuss beyond that, other than our recommendations. And
actually, there's something to discuss about.
Oh,
yeah. I think it happened recently that the Diamond, the shippers and
Oh,
the primary
right.
shippers of the comic book industry, their recent president has left the company. Steve Jeppy stepped out like about roughly a week or half ago. He just stepped out. He just left the company. Um, the Diamond was having problems this entire time. With because of COVID, shipping out the comics on time, the price points, it was a complete mess. And during this pandemic, it just really hurt the comic book industry. So he stepped down, and we haven't have an announcement so far to be the guy to take over the company. Oh, I'm sorry. I read it wrong. Steve Jeppy took over. The guy who stepped down was Stan Heidemann. Sorry, yeah. And here's the thing, though. He used to work for PepsiCo as a financial executive. How did you go from Pepsi to working into Diamond as their head president? That was not a good decision. It really wasn't. Diamond. That was not a good decision. Yeah, that wasn't. So yeah, Diamond hasn't. Their former guy stepped down and a new guy stepped up. There's gonna be some changes. Some people, because of changes, decided to, oh my God, we're gonna do Diamond's gonna collapse. The industry's just dying. Dark Horse has decided to stick with Diamond and sees this as a challenge for themselves and maybe to draw bigger. Like I said, some other companies, such as the new DC, has decided to try to do direct printing and marketing themselves. And Marvel hasn't announced anything or done anything yet. So it's very interesting what will be like. And we will definitely give you the news, what every major publisher is going to do because of Diamond shit. Some people are scared. Some people are hopeful, like Dark Horse. My personal thing is it's going to be a huge shakeup. If the market goes back to the old days, like direct marketing, it will be interesting to see how much power the store owners have to buying books they want and putting it up. And you finally will have something like back in the day, like Sarah, you may know this, even you in real life, because you're a novel person, because I'm not much of a novel. There are stores that are probably set up for particular type of books or type of authors. There's like specialty stores.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, mostly for like romance or erotica. I mean, and there are definitely some stores that cater more to certain genres, like mystery books, but or like specific like publishing styles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most books are pretty, like, most bookstores are pretty all books, right? They're not like specialty stores are sort of few and in between. Like, you have to really be like, I can imagine probably like in Stephen King's hometown or wherever the hell he lives, in Maine. There's definitely like a horror themed bookstore that mostly has just horror. But like most book, like unless you have like a niche like that, that's people specifically going to be coming for that. Most bookstores, even independent ones, focus specifically on like selling as many types of books as they can.
Okay. Well, that's just some theories I have, but I guess the good thing is, at least in my theory, is that more comic book stores will have control over what they want to buy, how much they buy, and then maybe we'll have much more index of who's doing well, what does well, and it will be a much more interactive market, because instead of just the publisher has to, if you want this is the truth, and this is the problem with all industry. If you want a particular variant, a special cover of a comic book, you have to buy X amount of issues. That's expensive just to sell that variant and then mark it up to a collector. That's not good business. That's the way I look at it. But yeah. Oh, well, that is that. And I'm sorry, everyone, for ranting about Dan DiDio, but we can now recommend you some fantastic books.
Yes.
Sarah, take it away.
All right. So, in an opposite space, I'm not actually going to be putting out a recommendation for a book that is DC. I know, surprise. It's been a very DC episode, but I, in fact, am not going to be. This is actually an independent comic. A lot of you know Sara Scribbles, aka Sarah Anderson, and if you haven't seen it, she's come out with 2 books for her scribbles. Like, basically, if you've ever seen black and white comics with like a sort of small, big-eyed cartoon character with frizzy hair, that's Sara Scribbles, and she's amazing, but that's not what I'm recommending today. She came out with a comic on Tapas that is basically about a vampire and a werewolf who end up falling in love. And and it's the sort of same idea as Sara Scribbles, where like they're very short, 3 to 4 panel comics, and it's really cute. You can read them online for free, but she will be coming out with a printed version soon, also called Fangs. That's coming out by a small publisher called Andrew McNeil Publishing, which is awesome because I love collected editions, and it's going to have about 25, I think, new comics in the same universe, which is exciting. It's called the same as the comic Fangs. You can pre-order it just about anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Bookstop, IndieBound, wherever you get your book pre-orders. It's coming out this September 1st, and it's super exciting. It's a great comic. It's not like her typical style. It is way more elaborate in the sense that, like, it's not like these little scribble people. It is very much more like classic anatomy, very much not super complicated sets. It's still in black and white, but it's definitely something that looks more like a labor of love rather than like like a comedy style doodle sort of thing. So if that's something you're interested in, I highly encourage you to go to Tapas and check out the stuff that's there, and to put in your pre-order, because it's going to be super exciting to be getting this book. I put in a pre-order like the hour that she announced it, because there had been hints that she was going to put in a collected edition of these comics, and I was like, I need this book. It's so up my alley. I can't even. So there you have it, Fangs by Sara Anderson. Get it while you can.
Oh, what I'm going to recommend is my favorite writer, Dan DiDio's Amendment. Oh God, no! I just did a rant. You guys are stupid. I'm not going to rant. No, come on.
No, man, no.
All right, but seriously, I'm going to recommend Ecstatic, the complete collection, volume 1. It is Peter Gilligan's Mike Allred's weirdest X-Men adventure story about X-Force. At least a different X-Force you may know about. And I recommend this book because I'm a huge Allred fan. It's weird, it's goofy, it's funny, it's satirical. Imagine if the X-Men were celebrities and they're being celebrities while being X-Men, and the weird adventures and all this stuff happens. It's just crazy. The power levels they had Dead Girl. Oh God, it's just great. It's just one of my favorite weirdest collections. And the first one is out, and it collects. And yes, it wasn't called Ecstatic in the beginning. It was originally X-Force. So they collected it when it became X-Force, and then it had some issues when it became Ecstatic. I don't know when the second volume will be coming out, but I am excited when it does. And this backstory is it took me a while to collect. Because this book was never being printed properly, I ended up trying to collect the entire series as single issues, and I did. And then before I found out that there was a guy who can melt the edges together and make it to a real book, so just flip it across, they announced this, and I'm looking at my comic book guy. He's like, all right, I may give you a discount for this back or whatever. I'm like, no, I'll keep it, because I'll just give it to somebody else, or just donate to the library like a good Samaritan. That's, by the way, guys, if you have old comic book things you want to read and you're not interested in selling them, give them to your local library. It'll help the people read, and it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I read a lot from the library, because I'm always like, I don't know if I want this, but like maybe I do, or and then I often read it first, then I decide, I do really like it, or it's not really for me.
Yeah, but anyways, Ecstatic Complete Collection Volume 1. It's the new one by Marvel. Mike Allred and Peter McGillen, great guys. Peter McGillen was also another writer at Vertigo and DC who, if you heard this podcast, you could imagine now, wink. But all seriousness, Peter Gilligan's great. And this book is something I recommend to everybody who likes the weirder side of comics.
Very cool.
Very cool. And I guess that wraps up today, unless we have a rant about someone else we need to do. Is someone on the hit list now?
No, I mean, J.K. Rowling's still a piece of shit. Just in case if anybody was wondering from last time if she stopped being a piece of shit. Spoiler alert. She's still a piece of shit.
Spoiler. Oh, so you can say she doubled down again.
Yeah, she just doubled down. And some authors are calling for we need to be civil and be nice to J.K. Rowling. And I'm like, no, I mean, it's one thing to disagree about I don't know who you're gonna vote for, or if ketchup
what's the best ice cream?
Yeah, or if ketchup or mustard is better. But when it's hi, your policies directly hurt people, cause people to be assaulted, to be raped, to be murdered, basically, and it's based on such bad misinformation that clearly there's no, it's not like you're expressing an opinion, you're literally based your opinion on lies and falsities, and that attitude continues to get those people who you are not and will never be hurt and killed. That's not okay. Like that shit's not okay. Like it's just not. There's no civility when people's lives are on the fucking line.
Basically.
You know what I mean? It's just like saying like, oh well, you know, all abuse victims are lying. It's like that's no. You see, the thing is when you don't believe abuse victims, when they face abuse and you don't believe them, then they're more likely to get killed or seriously hurt, or you know, a number of things. So no, when it comes to people's lives, there's no such thing as civility. Which there have been some authors who I really enjoy, like Stephen King and Margaret Atwood, who have come in sort of like the defense of like the civil discourse. I'm like, yeah, y'all are old, you know, and you're never going to face any of these issues. So
it's also the idea is that like we need to be like guys. That was from your era when people were nice. People aren't nice anymore. I'm being quite serious. People would die on an ideology because they don't give a crap.
Yeah,
trust me, we've gone past disability. And speaking of disability, that's the best way to end this podcast. You try to be civil, but if they're not civil, don't do it because they will want you to go high and they keep going low. If you go low, kick them in the shins.
Yeah, the problem, and like you were saying, it's like, you know, this is the same thing that happened with the civil rights movement in the 60s, where like, well, they were just being civil and asking for their rights, then we'd give it to them. It's like, that's what they were doing. And you fucking ignored them, and them not fighting for their rights, again, leads to death, assault.
Yeah.
You know, like, no. There's a line. There's a fucking line, and if that line ends with people being brutalized, then it's no longer a matter of civility. That's done. That's over with. But anyway.
Yeah.
Whew, deep breaths. Everything is fine. Hopefully next episode will be a happy episode.
Next episode we'll probably be talking about how much of rainbows and ponies and how
kittens
and how Gail Sloan has the best hair ever and she'll be writing Batwoman again.
Man,
that's a dream, by the way. That's a dream. I'm still dying on it. That's a hill I'll die on.
That's
she should write Batwoman forever.
It's okay. I'll bring your gravestone up the hill. It'll be a cool.
With that, thank you everyone for listening to our podcast. Please share and like this podcast with your friends and follow us on social medias. And this is us signing out. See you guys next time.